Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. And if you're a true General Hospital fan, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's get started with today's video. General Hospital, GH spoilers for Monday, July 27th, show that Gio Palmieri, Giovanni Mazza, will perform a daring rescue while Britt Westbourne, Kelly Thibault, lashes out at Jason Morgan, Steve Byrne. Willow Kane, Caitlin McMullen, will make an emotional request of Harrison Chase, Josh Swickard. So, here's what GH fans should look forward to. Willow feels cornered now that Chase has arrived to take her to the police station. Willow wants to prepare for the escape plan Jack Brennan, Chris McKenna, promised her, so she'll want to avoid this trip to the PCPD. Chase is going to bring Willow in for interrogation in the Jen Sidwell, Carlo Rhoda case, but she will cry and beg for a favor. Willow will beg Chase to inform them that he was unable to locate her, but she has more pressing issues that she is unaware of. That is because Nina Reeves, Cynthia Watros, just pushed Drew Kane, Cameron Matheson, into the lake on the Quartermaine property. Nina will panic in the aftermath and appear to regret her actions as she screams Drew's name. After Brooke Lynn Quartermaine, Amanda Seton, advises Gio go for another swim, he heads down to the lake. Gio should find Nina screaming and understand Drew is in the water before leaping in for help. After Gio saves Drew's life, Willow should receive a surprising phone call. Nina will eventually send out an SOS to Brennan, who may finally be able to assist her now that Valentine Cassadine, James Patrick Stewart, has offered a black box deal. On Monday's episode, Valentine will strike a settlement, so he will demand that his assets be unfrozen, among other things. Once Brennan has the black box back and the proper leverage, he may be able to keep Drew silent about Willow's actions as well as Nina's little water-shoving stunt. Over with Molly Lansing Davis, Kristen Vaganos, she will tell Dante Falconeri, Dominic Zamprogna, that it is difficult not to be enthused about the possibilities. Molly will most likely be discussing the opportunity to nail Sidwell in court and secure a significant victory. Ava Jerome, Maura West, will press for honesty from Ethan Lovett, Nathan Dean, and try to figure out what he really wants. Monday's preview video also shows Britt slapping Jason, implying that their reunion is likely to get very heated. According to General Hospital spoilers, an action-packed episode is on its way, so don't miss out on all the exciting news and heated confrontations. The tension in Port Charles had been building for days, the type of pressure that only a city like this could generate, where every secret seemed to go back to the same few families and falsehoods. On the Quartermaine estate, the afternoon sun still lingered high enough to provide bright reflections on the lake surface, but the water itself appeared darker than usual, as if it knew what was about to happen. Nina Reeves stood at the edge of the water, her hands still trembling from the thrust she'd just given. Drew Kane's wheelchair was empty a few feet behind her. The guy who had once been her buddy, then her blackmailer, and finally the living threat to everything she had done to safeguard Willow was now face down in the lake, drowning. She had not planned the precise occasion. Drew, recovering more speech and power by the hour, began to craft the sentences that would destroy her daughter. Willow's role in the Sidwell case, the paralysis they had imposed on Drew to keep him silent, the web of cover-ups that now ran from the hospital halls to the PCPD, all of this was going to spill out of a man who could no longer be controlled only by pharmaceuticals. Nina stared at the water and saw the last available choice. She pressed. The splash was louder than she had expected. For a moment, she just looked as if the act belonged to someone else. Then the truth of what she had done hit her, and she began screaming his name. The scream drifted across the land, thin and frantic, like the cry of a woman who had just realized she had crossed the line from protection to murder. Brooke Lynn Quartermaine was talking to Gio Palmieri near the pool house when they heard the first scream. She had casually recommended Gio go for another swim while the weather was still warm. The young man shrugged, grabbed a towel, and began strolling toward the lake with no sense of urgency. That changed when he came around the final bend in the walk and spotted Nina at the water's edge, her face blanched and her voice breaking as she cried for Drew. Gio did not hesitate. He dropped the towel, kicked off his shoes, and dove. The water rushed over him, cold and abrupt. Visibility was weak near the surface where the light fragmented, but as you descended, You could see the shape of the wheelchair and the still body of the man twisted in it. Gio reached him, fought the weight of the chair, and was able to free Drew's body enough to drag him upward. Breaking the surface was like leaving a grave. He dragged the heavier guy toward the bank, muscles aching and lungs screaming, until he could roll Drew into the grass. He looked up, and Nina was still screaming. She fell to her knees alongside them, hands uselessly hanging over Drew's chest. Gio began compressions, his summer lifeguard training taking over, without conscious consideration. Drew coughed, water streaming from his mouth, and drew in a strained breath after what seemed like an eternity, but was really just a minute. His eyes opened unfocused, and fastened on Nina's face with something other than appreciation. Gio slumped down on his heels, his chest heaving. He'd saved a life. He had no idea how many individuals in Port Charles would have preferred that he had come 30 seconds earlier. Word spread quickly. Willow received the call, while still arguing with Chase, in the living room of the house she was using as a temporary residence. Chase had arrived earlier with an official request that she come downtown for interrogation regarding Jen Sidwell. The casing had developed teeth. The district attorney's office became concerned as additional evidence, timings, and Willow's name appeared in unexpected places. Chase had attempted to keep the talk professional, but their past made every phrase hit harder than it should. Willow's cheeks became pale the moment the phone rang. She listened quietly, then turned away so Chase wouldn't see the full intensity of her reaction. Drew had almost drowned. Gio had pulled him out. Nina was with him. The specifics remained sketchy, but the meaning was clear. The man she and her mother had fought so hard to hush was alive, cognizant, and no longer under their control. She hung up the phone and faced Chase again. The next request she made was delicate and almost broken. She urged him to inform the department that he had been unable to locate her.
Just for a short while.
Just long enough for her to figure things out. Chase stared at her. The tension played out on his face in real time. The cop who had sworn an oath, the man who still cared about the woman standing in front of him, the developing suspicion that something far worse than a simple interrogation was going on around Willow Kane. He did not give her an immediate response. The stillness between them grew to become its own type of answer. Nina, across town, had already made a call. Jack Brennan answered the second ring. Her voice was rough. She explained what she had done, what Gio had undone, and what Drew now knew or would soon recall. Brennan listened without interruption. When she finished, he remained silent for a few seconds before telling her to stay where she was and wait for instructions. Valentine Cassidy's black box, which had previously served as leverage, had now become more than a bargaining chip. Valentine wants his assets unfrozen and a fresh start on certain pending issues. In exchange, he was willing to provide over the gadget, which held recordings and paperwork capable to burying more than one person in Port Charles. Brennan saw the road clearly. Collect the box, use its contents to keep Drew silent about Willow's activities and Nina's frantic shove, and give enough time for the wider escape plan to come together. Valentine, for his part, approached the deal with the serenity of someone who has already considered all options. He met with Brennan later that afternoon and spelled out the terms in a straightforward manner. The black box would change hands whenever certain financial restrictions were relaxed and certain names were removed from specific lists. Brennan agreed on principle. The particulars would be hammered out before nightfall. Both men realized that the window was closing. Drew's recovery was no longer theoretical. He was breathing.
He was speaking.
And the lake had not held any secrets. Molly Lansing Davis sat across from Dante Falconeri in an otherwise empty conference room, trying to keep her excitement under control. The Sidwell case appeared to be progressing toward a conviction. New evidence had surfaced. Witnesses were cooperative. The prospect of locking up a violent individual for an extended period of time was all too real. Dante shared her hope, but he was more aware of how many corners had already been cut to get here. He did not express his worries. He simply nodded and assured her that they would proceed carefully. Ava Jerome chose a different type of honesty that day. She tracked out Ethan Lovett and forced the topic that had been circling them for weeks. She revealed details about her background that she had previously kept hidden, such as the calculations she had made and the persons she had used. Ethan listened with the caution of a man who had been burnt before. It's uncertain whether he believed her. Ava persisted, trying to read the truth in his reactions as she had always done in other people's flaws. Britt Westbourne and Jason Morgan's reunion did not go as expected in calmer moments. Jason had returned to Port Charles with the weight of months spent in places few people ever see or survive. Britt had been dealing with her own complicated return to the medical profession and the social circles that accompanied it. When they finally stood face to face, the air between them crackled with unspoken words. The talk began off civil. It didn't stay that way. Old wounds have reopened. Accusations flew. Britt's palm made contact with Jason's face in a quick, purposeful slap, which resonated in the unexpected hush that followed. Both of them remained motionless for several heartbeats. The mark on his cheek and the expression in her eyes conveyed more than any apology could in that moment. By the evening, the lake had returned to its calm state. Drew was under observation. Gio was hailed for the rescue but then left alone, with the unsettling feeling that he had entered into a greater story than a mere drowning. Nina awaited Brennan's next move. Willow awaited Chase's decision. Valentine waited for the transaction to complete. And Port Charles, as it always did, waited for the next secret to emerge, the next body to be discovered, the next desperate decision to be taken in the name of love, survival, or both. The day began with normal sunlight and the sense of control. It finished with a man being dragged from the water, a mother attempting to drown a threat, a daughter asking a cop to lie, and a slap indicating that a reunion would not be easy. In a town based on unfinished business, Monday had simply added new chapters that no one could yet close. The late afternoon sun hung low over the Quartermain estate, spreading long golden streaks across the lake's surface, which had always appeared serene, almost ornamental, to anyone who had never seen a man sink beneath it. Nina Reeves was motionless on the dock, her hands still spread from the shove that had pushed Drew Kane's wheelchair forward and over the edge. The splash had been loud and final. Then the water closed over him, leaving only the frenzied thump of her own beating. Drew. Her voice cracked with the first scream. She fell to her knees at the edge of the boards, staring into the black water as if pure willpower could undo what she had done.
Drew.
Somebody please. Inside the main home, Brooklyn Quartermain was still discussing music with Gio Palmieri when faint, faraway cries echoed through the open windows. She paused mid-sentence and tilted her head. Have you heard that? Gio frowned. He had been half listening, half planning when he could sneak away for a swim. The summer heat had crept into his bones after the recording sessions, and the lake had always served as his reset button. It sounds like someone is yelling. Brooklyn waved her hand. Probably just the kids playing around. You should go for that swim you always talking about. Clear your head before we get back to the track list tomorrow. He didn't need much convincing. Gio took a towel from the hall closet, kicked off his shoes on the back stairs, and began walking down the path to the river. The cries became clearer with each step. A woman's high and cracked voice repeats a name over and over. When he turned the last hedge and spotted the pier, he came to a stop. Nina was on her knees, her hair wild, and one hand gripped the edge of the boards as if she was about to jump in. Beyond her, the lake's surface was pierced by something dark and thrashing, wheels, metal, a pale face screaming for air. Drew is in the water, Gio shouted, already racing. He did not wait for Nina's response. The cloth struck the grass.
He dived.
The lake was colder than it appeared. The wheelchair had rotated sideways, with one wheel still spinning above the surface for a second before sinking completely. Drew's head poked through once, eyes wild and lips open in a quiet shout, before slipping back under. Gio reached him with 3 powerful strokes, hooking his arm under Drew's shoulders and kicking hard toward the dock. The weight of the chair attempted to drag them both down. Gio battled it, lungs burning, until his free hand grabbed the ladder. Nina scrambled to aid, grabbing Drew's arm while Gio pushed from below. They hauled him onto the boards. Drew coughed, water spilling from his mouth, and took in a ragged breath, which led to another cough. His eyes met Nina's for a long, furious second before rolling back. Gio checked Drew's pulse, which was thready but present, and then shifted him onto his side. Call an ambulance. Nina's hands were shaking so much that she nearly dropped her phone. She finished the numbers, then sank by the pier, staring at the guy she had attempted to mute. I didn't, he could speak. He muttered, "Oh God." Gio didn't respond. He kept a constant compression on Drew's chest until the distant sound of sirens cut through the afternoon. Willow Kane was cramming paperwork into a messenger bag in her congressional office when her phone buzzed. She nearly disregarded it. Chase was somewhere in the building, or would be shortly, and every minute she stayed seemed risky. Brennan had promised a way out, new names, a private aircraft, and a fresh start for her and the kids if she could just get them out of Port Charles before Drew started talking again. She had already informed Nina that they needed to depart tonight. The plot was in motion. All she had to do was get past the investigator who had come seeking for her regarding Sidwell. The phone continued buzzing. She took one look at the screen and froze. A call from an unknown number, followed by another from the same number. She answered. "Willow, it's about Drew." The voice on the other ear was hurried, medical, and formal. "He's been retrieved from Coeur d'Alene Lake. He is still alive, but his condition is critical. They're bringing him to General Hospital presently. You need to." The remainder of the words were muffled. Willow's knees gave out. She perched firmly on the edge of the desk, the bag slipping off her shoulder.
Alive.
Critical.
Lake.
Nina. The parts smashed together so quickly that she felt nauseous. She was still sitting there, phone forgotten in her hand, when the door opened and Detective Harrison Chase entered. "Willow, I need you to join me. There are issues regarding the Sidwell probe, and Dante wants." She looked up, her eyes already moist. "Chase, please." The word came out small. "Could you please do me a favor and tell them you couldn't find me?" He paused. The request hovered between them, impossible and desperate. Chase's expression turned from professional to concerned. "Willow, I can't enter right now. Not today. Please. Just claim I wasn't present. I will come in tomorrow. I swore." He regarded her for a long minute, feeling the weight of whatever storm was breaking over the Coeur d'Alene estate even though she hadn't said anything. Finally, he exhaled. "You have 24 hours. After that, I can't cover for you." She nodded, reaching for her purse once more. "Thank you." Chase walked away, without saying anything else. Willow dialed Nina immediately after the door closed. It went directly to voicemail. She tried again. The same result. Panic surged higher. She grabbed her keys and ran. The emergency bay at General Hospital was already in controlled chaos when the ambulance doors opened. Drew was pushed in, an oxygen mask covering his face and monitors beeping harsh warnings. Nurses moved quickly. Doctors bark orders. Britt Westbourne was concluding a late shift that she had already complained about twice that day. Lucas had advised her earlier to be grateful that she still had a job. She had bitten back a response and continued working. The trauma bay doors opened, and the name on the inbound chart stopped her cold. Drew Kane. Nearly drowned. Coeur d'Alene Lake. She stepped aside to let the gurney pass, and then continued walking. The passageway seemed narrower than usual. She needed air, coffee, or just 5 minutes alone. She turned a corner and almost walked into Jason Morgan. He appeared both different and the same, taller after his absence, eyes sharper, and the calm focus that had always been his. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. Jason's mouth twisted in what could have been relief. Britt. The sound of her name in his voice shattered what little control she had left. Everything she had discovered while he was gone, the contrived illness, the way Cullum and Sidwell had used her, the months of fearing she was dying, the slow understanding that the life she thought she might have with him had been created on someone else's lies, all came flooding back at once.
She did not think.
She simply swung. The slap reverberated down the calm hallway. Jason's head twisted with the force of it. His hand moved slowly up to brush his cheek, never leaving her gaze.